The St. Louis Cardinals welcome in the Milwaukee Brewers for a 3-game set at Busch Stadium. What is it about these two franchises that has them going in two very different directions? This is a Locked on Cardinals, Locked on Brewers crossover.
You are Locked on Cardinals, your daily St. Louis Cardinals podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Cardinals and Brewers fans. I'm J.D. Hafford, and I'm a national radio sports anchor, born and raised in St. Louis and a lifetime Cardinals fan. I'm the host for Locked on Cardinals, representing the First Place Brew Crew is longtime TV and radio personality and host of the Locked on Brewers podcast, Chuck Freeman. Both of us, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, covering your team every day. You can follow us both on Twitter X. You can follow our podcast. You can also find us on YouTube. Make sure you stop on by, both Locked on Cardinals and Locked on Brewers. Make it your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And as I mentioned, of course, we're on YouTube. You can find us there too. And we're here talking ball, talking about the NL Central specifically today. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, Chuck, how is life in Milwaukee? Things are probably feeling pretty good right now, considering how the record's going. You guys have, won 5 in a row? Is there anything to complain about right now?
Well, I'll tell you, if you were to cover up the NL Central standings and you just looked at the records and you would say, who's 70 and 50 or whatever the Brewers are, who's 20 games over the 500 mark? If you would have done this in April, you would have said, well, the Cubs, the Cardinals, maybe the Reds, but certainly you wouldn't have put the Milwaukee Brewers 20 games over the 500 mark. I mean, it's been an amazing season. Sometimes I don't know how they're doing it, but they are. But the proof will be, as we always say in Wisconsin here, the proof will be when October rolls around to see. Otherwise, all this is just, they're a paper champion otherwise.
Yeah. No, I feel your pain. The Cardinals have won the division a few times recently and went nowhere afterwards. And it's almost like, well, what was that all for? It was kind of useless. So the Brewers and Cardinals are set to play each other 6 more times before this season is over. 3 of them are going to be happening at Busch Stadium over the next 3 days. And then we got 3 more in Milwaukee in the first week of September. Now, for those who haven't kept up, the Brewers have dominated this series, Chuck. They have won 6 of 7 thus far, swept the Cardinals in St. Louis back in April. It's been a while since we've seen each other, so I want to catch everybody up. In that series, they won 2-1 in 10 innings where the Brewers walked in, the only run that the Cardinals scored that day. Then they crushed them 12-5 after the Cardinals had a 4-2 lead. Then they beat up on Michaelis and Zach Thompson and Giovanni Gallegos, a couple of guys who aren't even here anymore, as well as Andre Palante. Then you get a 2-0 shutout win that Sunday. Colin Ray was on the mound for you guys that day, and I think he went 5 innings. The pen was fantastic. They blanked them. Sonny Gray was his first loss of the year, despite him pitching very well. Struck out 12 that day in 6 1/3 innings, allowed just 2 runs. The legendary Owen Miller drove in both runs that day, Chuck, if you remember. And then things go to Milwaukee for 4 games on that Mother's Day weekend, and the Brewers win the first 3 convincing fashion, 7-1, 11-2, 5-3. At this point, the Brewers are laughing at the Cardinals. They've won all 6 games. And Mother's Day is when the famous Ali Marmol ejection happened. If you remember, he got worked up at the home plate umpire, and they started yelling back and forth. Daniel Descalso was yelling at him, and it turned into this big thing. The Cardinals come back in that game. They actually win the game, and their record at that point set at 16-24. The Brewers still 6-1 in this series. They're fine. Outscored the Cardinals 42-16. It was a bloodbath, Chuck. Then from that point, though, the Cardinals kind of caught fire. They went on a tear for a while there. Had one of the best records in the league. They went 34-22 from that point and finished the first half of the season at 50-46. So now Cardinal fans are starting to feel a little bit better about themselves. Like, okay, man, we're in this thing. Wasn't really concerned about the division yet, but at least they were, in playoff contention. They had gotten as high as that second wild card. Since the All-Star break, though, they've come crashing back to earth. 11-17 since that point. They're 61-63. They're clinging for dear life at any sort of chance at making the playoffs now. Meanwhile, your Brewers have just stayed the course. 55-42 at the break. They've been better in the second half, going 17-10, despite losing one of your top hitters in Christian Yelich for the rest of the season. We're all wondering, Chuck. We're all listening. We're all paying attention. All the GMs, I got them all on the horn here. How the hell are you guys doing it? What is it this year about the Milwaukee Brewers that is just churning out win after win?
You know, it's amazing because you look at up and down that Brewer lineup. There's nobody who really bowls you over in that offensive lineup. You know, you got the Cardinals, you got Goldschmidt, Arenado, even though Arenado's not having a very good year. But, you know, you got Nootbaar, you got guys. But Milwaukee doesn't have any of that. And they have some young players. They have some future stars. They have Jackson Chourio, who at 20 years old is right now their best hitter. I'm going to say he's their best hitter. And we didn't even know coming out of spring training if he was going to make the team. Not for sure. He did sign a big contract in the offseason. Right. And so I kind of guarantee him on this team. The pitching staff, it's a no-name pitching staff, got retreads out of the bullpen, but guys are all just doing their job. I don't know, again, JD, but I'm telling you, and Brewer fans, I think I can speak for them as well. Every time we think this team is going to go south and go on a little bit of a skid, and their longest losing streak is 3, they pick themselves right off the mat and they win 3 or 4 more games, and they get those losses back.
Yeah, and one thing that's not happening when the Brewers happen to lose a couple of games, nobody gains any ground on them. Nobody wins at the same time. They all kind of stay together. So when the Brewers would drop 2, so would the Cardinals, or so would the nobody ever gained any ground on Milwaukee, and now you've got them running away with the division, and it's laughable how much they've just taken off and have dominated so far this year.
Yeah, you know, the division is over. And I even said 2 months ago, JD, it was between the Brewers and Cardinals. The Cubs, the Pirates, I never took the Pirates seriously. And the Reds. The Reds, who I did take seriously, but made a couple of threats, but never really made any headway. But the Brewers pulled away, and right now I look at, it's 11 games, but I'm looking at the Brewers possibly catching the Dodgers or the Phillies for one of the top 2 seeds, and I think that's the key. That's where I'm at with Milwaukee. You know, the division title is there for the Brewers. It's just a matter of when. They just got to catch one of those other 2 teams to get one of the top 2 records. Now I remember 2011. Now JD, 2011. I remember listening to the post-game show, the St. Louis Cardinals. And it was at the end of August. So that was one of the final trading deadlines. I remember August 31st was a trading deadline. So, and the guy who was hosting the Cardinals post-game show on KMOX, wherever it was, 101.1, I think it was, said, we got to sell off our guys. We just have to get rid of all our guys because we're not going to the postseason. Sure enough, you guys somehow got into the postseason, won the wild card, and I was thrilled when the Cardinals beat the Phillies in 2011 because we didn't want to see the Phillies. I was like, fantastic. We were celebrating on the radio. Oh, we're playing the Cardinals. Oh, sure enough. Don't ask for that. And 6 games later, and you guys are going to the World Series, and the rest is history. But I remember that post-game show on ESPN 101.1. I remember listening to it on the internet, and they had counted you guys out. So I never counted the Cardinals. I think you guys are still in the wild card race, but you're not in the division race. That's for sure, I'd say.
Yeah, the division is long gone. Because there was for a while there that some of us still talked about it, like, what is actually the easiest route to get in? Because people were afraid that they would never be able to leapfrog so many teams, where the Mets were kind of on fire at the time. Arizona and San Diego are going bonkers at the moment. They don't stop winning. And so some people were like, well, maybe if Milwaukee finally falls apart and stops winning all the time. But at this point of the season, like, why would anybody expect Milwaukee to go down at all? Like, it's they've been able to just do what they've been doing all season long, and that's just play solid winning baseball. You mentioned Chourio and how good he's been, but like, Adames, who's one of the top RBI guys in the league. Rhys Hoskins quietly 20 home runs, 60 RBIs. Obviously, Contreras behind the plate has been very, very good for you guys. Yelich was having a good season despite the injuries, which unfortunately have taken him out. But I don't know. It's just a solid team. There's just not one major weak spot where you can point at and go, they're not good at this. I don't see that anywhere.
No, and when I say they remind me of the Cardinals to me have always been one of those teams that does a lot of things right.
Mm-hmm.
ABC baseball, over
right.
the big picture, maybe not so much this year, but over the big picture, the Cardinals do a lot of things right. That's what this Brewer teams does. They play with a very high baseball IQ. They bunt, they get runners over, they do a lot of fundamental things right, which they have to do, because if they don't, the margin of error, I've always said, with the Brewers is very, very small. So, they can't go out. They don't have enough talent on this team at this point, or maturity on this team as far as major league experience, to have 3 or 4 errors in a game and get by, or have a starting pitcher go out there and give 6 runs over the first 2 innings and get by. The margin error is so small, but they do a lot of the right things to win baseball games, JD.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, that was something that, for our Cardinal fan, Cardinal baseball, that's what they were known for. They do the right things. They run the bases well. They play good defense. They don't make the silly mistakes that will cost teams that maybe don't have the talent of everybody else. But if they minimize those mistakes, they can compete with all of them and come out with wins. And that's something that the Brewers have mastered this year. Whereas a lot of these other teams, my Cardinals, they find ways to lose instead of finding ways to win. And that's kind of been the story this year. I do want to talk more about you guys being underrated. As good as you guys have been this year, like how come the national audience doesn't give you any love? And do you prefer it that way? So I want to talk more with Chuck Freeman about that coming up here on this Locked On Cardinals and Locked On Brewers crossover. All right. So let's talk a little bit about FanDuel. Now, our guys at FanDuel, you've heard us talk about them a lot. America's #1 sports book. They're awesome. They got something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers, and Chuck's going to love this as well, can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And that's a beautiful thing because Chuck and I are both Packers fans.
Yes.
And I don't live in Green Bay. I live in Wisconsin. So unless they're on national TV or I go somewhere else to watch the game that's got it all, I'm in trouble. I can't go watch them. So Sunday Ticket has been incredible for me and my love for the Cheeseheads for a very long time. So here's how it works. With a YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. So our friends in Milwaukee or in the Wisconsin area, you guys are golden when it comes to Green Bay Packers football. But what if there are other teams you want to keep an eye on? Those pesky 49ers? I know. I don't like them either. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. It's a game changer. If you've never had NFL Sunday Ticket, I don't know how you've lived. If you're an NFL football fan, you've got to get it. There's people that have it, and they're much happier as football fans than the people who do not have it. For my folks in St. Louis, if you still follow the Rams, if you're a Chiefs fan these days, whomever it may be, perfect deal for you guys. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sports book and get in on this fantastic deal that they are running. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals and Locked On Brewers your first listen today. For your second listen, please enjoy the Locked On MLB podcast hosted by Sully, who is here daily to provide national expertise with his trademark humor. He's probably not a lot nicer to you than me, Chuck, because he likes to needle us who aren't winning, and he likes to applaud the teams that are winning. So
I heard he was crashing the Brewers the other day.
Was he really? Oh, shame.
Oh my God. Someone tweeted at me and said, hey,
shame on Sully.
Well, we're talking about an MLB. He's been trashing the Brewers.
He needs to have a discussion with you then as you guys all prepare for the Fall Classic, because he's got it covered every single day on Locked On MLB, which is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A reminder, you can catch every pitch of the Cardinals hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Cardinals. Chuck Freeman, host of Locked On Brewers. I am JD Haffern, host of Locked On Cardinals, doing this crossover as we have another Titanic struggle in the NL Central. It's a 3-game series at Busch Stadium in St. Louis between the Cardinals and the Brewers. You mentioned it earlier, Chuck. This season, the Cardinals were selected by a number of people to be at or near the top of the division again, despite the awful season they had in 2023. I personally was not one of those people. I didn't think they were going to be a bad team. I just thought they were going to be kind of meh, like right in the middle. I predicted 84 wins, possible wild card team, just sort of mediocre. I wasn't blown away with all the moves they made in the offseason. I didn't find Sonny Gray was great, but I didn't enjoy the Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn moves when you really wanted to make a push to become a much better team. They're okay, but they're not that next level that I thought the team needed. And so far, I've been proven right. Some had the Brewers winning the division. Not a lot of people, as you mentioned. There were a lot of doubters out there. But the way you guys are running away with the division, considering all of the turnover, especially in the rotation, losing Corbin Burns, Woodruff gone, Craig Counsell leaves. You've had injuries to deal with, and yet here you are, steady Eddie, no big deal.
All-star for Devin Williams. Didn't get him back to a couple of weeks.
Devin Williams gone for 3 months of the season, one of the best relievers in all of baseball. And you look up, and there you are. There you are. Milwaukee Brewers, their best record in the National League. They're a game back of the Phillies at this moment, have half a game behind the Dodgers, I believe. And then over the American League, where, everybody thinks they're the gods of baseball over there, it's the Orioles, the Yankees, and that's where the Brewers would be, right behind those teams as well. So why is it you don't hear as many teams taking the Brewers seriously? Then, nationally, I get the market size thing, which is always a problem for any of us Midwest teams. But what is it about? Because as we talked about in segment 1, like, all it is a solid baseball team that goes out, does their jobs, and wins games. I thought that was the point. Why not the Brewers?
Since 2017, they have the 6th best record in baseball, which is amazing.
And nobody would know that if you weren't a Brewers fan, probably.
No, because they haven't had a lot of postseason success, like we're talking, and they haven't won a playoff series since 2018 in Colorado in the divisional series. Think about this. The Brewers are never on ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. Never. I'm talking never, ever. I mean, and through the bad years, good years, for whatever reason, I don't know why. I can't even think of the last time, and I go to a lot of games, that I went to a Sunday night game at AmFam Field where the Brewers play.
Yeah.
ESPN will not put them on Sunday Night Baseball. I get a newsletter from in the morning. I get from MLB.com, and they always give you the top stories of the day. Brewers just swept the 3-game series from Cleveland. All right, the two of the better teams in baseball. Yep. Not a word of the 7 headlines. Didn't make any of the 7 headlines. Oh, of course, the Yankees are there. The Dodgers are there. It's same teams all the time. They talk about the same teams. And, here we are in the Midwest. And other than the Cubs, they don't talk about the Cardinals. They don't talk about the Brewers. They don't talk about the Brewers at all. And I don't know. I feel like sometimes Major League Baseball wants 7 teams, and the rest of us, they could care less about.
Yeah, it can be annoying because, you're looking at the headlines too, and it's like, the Yankees blow a game on Sunday night against Detroit. And stuff like that, where 2 very good teams in Cleveland and Milwaukee, we're sorry, we're not in the biggest markets in America, but 2 very solid teams who are doing outstanding things without having to spend $300 million. And why wouldn't you show them a little bit of love? I find it as annoying as you do. But let me ask you this. Is there something about being that underdog team that maybe you guys relish, that you're like, all right, fine, don't pay attention to us, we like it that way? Or would you prefer getting a little bit more respect?
Well, I think it's been that way for all of our sports teams, save the Green Bay Packers, who are a national brand, as you know. The Bucs and the Brewers. I feel like it's always that way. So over the years, if they're on national TV, we're like, oh, wow, we're national TV, unbelievable. But yeah, I look at it this too. On the other hand, I say that the Brewers don't get enough national attention and stuff like this, but you've been to 1 World Series in 54 years. You won World Series and you lost it to you guys. And the Brewers were in the American League at the time. I'll tell you, I was a kid back then, JD, and when we lost Game 7 of the Cardinals, I think I told you this, I was like, I was not worried. I was like, I wasn't sad because I thought, they'll be back.
They'll be back.
Here we are 42 years later, and we're still looking to get back, at least just to get there at least. But No, I don't know about that underdog mentality. I think it's all about, JD, going out there and proving yourself in the postseason. You've done it in the regular season here several years, but you've had several disappointing postseasons. I think that's what it's all about.
Well, because I always bring it up too, and it's just something you can needle. Like, the Yankees haven't really won a whole lot recently. The Dodgers, outside of a COVID championship, hadn't won diddly poo since 1988, but they go out and get the headlines because they pay for the people that, the guys want to write about and kids want to wear their jerseys, like who's the number one selling Brewers jersey in Milwaukee, do you think? If you had to take a guess, who would it be right now?
Christian Yelich. List, but Christian Yelich, who's been mostly disappointing, although he's having a good year this year, since 2019, mostly been disappointing.
Yeah.
And, but he's probably got the number one, among males and females, the number one jersey. Maybe Contreras is moving up the notch a little bit. And Jackson Churiel jerseys are showing up all over the place. He's probably going to surpass Christian Yelich. But that underdog role, we've been in it before. But what the Brewers need to do, okay, and if you look at the lack of success on professional sports teams in our sports history in America, the Brewers are one of the most pathetic when it comes to that as far as championships. No, 0 championships. So they got to go out and prove it. They got to go out and do something about it if they feel like they get this lack of respect.
Now, did you think the trade deadline moves that the Brewers made, was that enough, or were you hoping for more, or was that exactly what you thought they were going to do? Because on the Cardinals side of things, we knew they were going to be buyers. We knew that they weren't going to go wild and, give up the whole farm to go get a major name like a Garrett Crochet or anything like that. What they did was exactly what we thought they were going to do. It was Eric Fetty. It was go find some reliever off the heap, and then also add a right-handed hitting bat that could hit left-handers. Ended up being a former Cardinal in Tommy Pham, but Fetty was the big name that we were chasing, and the Brewers didn't go after any big names either. Added a couple of guys, but did you feel like that was enough at the time, or was that a disappointing deadline for fans?
It was disappointing, JD, because all of us were saying, well, I wanted another bat because I figured I had a feeling Yelich was going to be gone for the year, and I wanted another bat in the middle of that lineup.
Yeah.
Since then, the Brewers have increased their league, like I said, doubled their divisional lead on St. Louis, and they're 20 games up. I wanted Jack Flaherty. Yeah, I wanted him. And that was the final straw. On trading deadline day, all of a sudden, about 10 minutes before 5 o'clock, I'm sitting here ready to do a podcast if the Brewers are going to make a deal. Jack Flaherty goes to the Dodgers. And I was like, I'm out. I'm out. I give up.
Yeah. And it's funny because the names that you guys got were, you got Savali from Tampa Bay, who has had a little bit of success over the years, but then you take a guy from in the division and Frankie Montas, who, I tried to warn Reds fans about him when they signed him. I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know if he's going to be good enough for you guys. And it turned out he wasn't. But so far, things have been okay for you guys with these guys in your rotation.
They're 3-0 with his starts, but he hasn't been great in any of them. He gave up a 3-run first in his last outing, pitched 4 innings, stuck around for 5 innings. Haven't had a quality start out of him yet. 3 starts. It's early yet, but so far, I'd say underwhelming. The Brewers would tell me otherwise. They thought Montes was great. He hit 97 on the gun. But yeah, the moves they made, nothing really substantial. Milwaukee, we look at it, well, if a guy's coming off the injured list, that's like making a trade because they got Devin Williams off the injured list.
Wow, God, we have heard that one a lot.
You too?
That's a John Mozeliak classic right there. It's like making a trade.
Okay, I thought that was only a Brewers thing. But
no, man, we do it too.
All right. Like the complete week, you guys, your payroll is $30 to $40 million a year better than ours. And we're like,
we're higher than that, to be honest with you. I think you guys are around 115. If I saw that, and I think we're at 176.
Is that higher? Okay.
Yeah.
We're at 60 million. Now I look at it like this. Well, how come we're not spending as much as you guys in the free agent market or on salary, total salary? Why are we down at 115 and the card now I'm really mad that you told me it's why are you spending $60 million more? Is St. Louis that much bigger than Milwaukee? Come on.
Yeah, I can't answer it for your side. On our side, I can tell you this much: fans are mad that he doesn't spend more because he's a multi-billionaire owner, And they're upset that for all these years they've spent their hard-earned money and sold out Busch Stadium over and over and over. And now it seems like mediocrity is okay, where back in the early DeWitt years, he would not stand for such things. In fact, when he fired former Brewer Mike Matheny, that was one of the big things, was that like 500 may be good in some cities, but not in St. Louis, not with this fan base. And the last 2 years have been well below 500 if you take into consideration what the record was, traded everybody away. And then this year, where they went out and made some moves, made some additions, and they're still under 500. So it's a very volatile fan base right now in St. Louis who feel like they are not getting their money's worth, and that this ownership doesn't want it anymore and doesn't care enough about the team, that they're not trying to win championships. They're just hoping to get in. And it's a tough mentality to take when all these years we've been so spoiled in St. Louis, where we expect better than that. And when it doesn't arrive on the field and we keep getting excuses, like these guys, people are upset. They're very upset in St. Louis.
Well, when you guys went out and got Paul Goldschmidt from Arizona,
yeah,
I was upset. I was like, how come we're never in on a deal like that? And then I thought you got Nolan Arenado for a song, and the Cardinals are paying some of his salary, or the Rockies are paying some of his salary.
A lot of it, actually.
I'm like, how come we're not in on that deal? We can use Nolan Arenado, but I see his numbers this year: 13 homers. He's batting .268. How are fans feeling about 5 years ago? 44.
Chuck, look at Goldie's numbers and try not to cry a little bit.
I saw those too, but Arenado's are a little worse. But yeah. How are fans feeling about having Arenado? And he's opting in, I see, for those 5 years, $144 million.
Yeah, he decided not to opt out. People are, they're the Goldie stuff. They're kind of done. They kind of see like this should be the end of the road, but it would be a very Cardinal move to try to extend him and try to squeeze another year or two out of him. So I've kind of told people to be prepared for that.
Okay.
Arenado, I just wonder if it's injuries, if it's back problems that have caused that just zapped him of his power. I know they pitched him a lot differently. He's been, a lot of stuff's been away. I went back and looked at some of the old Colorado Rockies highlights, and anything middle in, he destroyed. And he's just not getting those pitches anymore. And when he is getting them, he's not hitting them like he used to. So, and maybe just the age. I mean, the guy's been playing almost 162 games every year since he was 22 when he came up. So maybe wear and tear has gotten to Nolan Arenado, and he's got a couple of years left. But the Goldie thing is very shocking, considering he was just the NL MVP 2 years ago, and Arenado was in third place in the MVP 2 years ago. And to see the two pillars that this team was supposed to be built around collapsing and just not being able to be who they used to be, obviously has killed this team's offensive production.
Goldschmidt is how old?
He's 36, will be 37.
And he's got how many years left on his contract?
This is it. This is the end of it.
Okay. I'm talking about the future Milwaukee Brewer, Paul Goldschmidt, because those are the kind of guys we love. Those are the kind of guys we go after. Guys at the end of their careers that we get in the bargain basement. We get those kind of guys.
Well, the good thing for you, Chuck, is if he does become a free agent and hits the market, when people leave St. Louis, they tend to become better hitters for whatever reason it is. Dylan Carlson's doing it right now with the Rays. So he'll probably be back to his old MVP form with you guys, hitting in the middle of that order in between Contreras and Adames, who he's a free agent, right? Willie Adames?
Yes, he is. He's not coming.
So that's he's not going to be cheap. I wonder what your guys' move will be there. But
they won't. No question about it. They're not going to. They never talked about an extension with him. They're moving on.
That's unfortunate, man. Turning away a guy who gets 100 RBIs like clockwork is that's not the easiest thing to find at the shortstop position.
And a great leader in the clubhouse. But
sounds like a good card, though. You should send him our way. We'll give you Goldie. You give us Adames.
Oh, well, that'd be a Brewer move right there. Well, we got Dallas Keuchel about a month ago.
That's like, right. You did, guy. You guys took a flyer on Keuchel.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. Always, JD, taking a flyer on some of these guys who were great 10 years ago.
We got a Lance Lynn. I see your Dallas Keuchel, and I'll give you a Lance Lynn from our rotation. We love the guy. We think he's a great guy. We love the dude. There's not a guy in the locker room that we don't like, but production is what it is at this point in his career. And when that's one of your big free agent signings, you're like, oh boy, here we go. Well, I want to get into, we're going to go into the pitching matchups here in just a moment. I also want to get some team awards from you. Surprises, disappointments. I want to hear what you have to say about that. So we'll do more with this Locked On Cardinals and Brewers crossover with Chuck Freeman and myself, JD Haffren. All right, PrizePicks. Now, I know you guys have been there before, and if you haven't yet, you're making a big mistake. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members, and it's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Because unlike the other apps that are out there, PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. You're not going up against somebody else who just sits there and studies all the stats each and every day. It's just you and the numbers, man. All you got to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and then you just watch your winnings roll, and it's a very simple thing. Now, if you're looking for promotions, they got you there, lowering select player stats projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, or getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. You can win up to 100 times your money right now on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks, turning $10 into $1,000. Who doesn't want that? Sign up today, get $50 instantly when you play just $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed for you. Preseason football is underway. We are not going to talk about what happened with the Packers game in Denver because that was gross. But you can also pick more or less on 2024 season stats on PrizePicks. So what's going to happen in week 1? How's Patrick Mahomes going to look this year? Throwing balls behind his back to Travis Kelce. What was that? CJ Stroud, one of the more up-and-coming quarterbacks in the league. Our very own Jordan Love. How good's he going to be this year? You can bet on it. Will he have the season that he finished the 2023 year with? Because he looked really freaking good. If you believe in it, you can put bets down on it. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, run your game. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals and Locked On Brewers your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On MLB podcast. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who's got it all covered every single day. You can find the link to Locked On MLB in the description, so you don't have to search for it or anything. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So with our teams in different spots, mine disappointing, Chuck's flourishing, enjoying life. Let's go through some of these awards that you would hand out to some of the team members. Now, I want to start with your offensive MVP this year, Chuck. Who do you think it is in Milwaukee?
Boy,
you got a couple of guys there.
Yeah, at one point, Contreras was in the running for MVP of the league, and he's way out of that right now. I will say it's got to be Willy Adames because he's come up with so many big hits on this team. I'm going to go with Willy Adames. I know Jackson Chourio is knocking on that door, but overall, clubhouse, I see Willie in the clubhouse, what he's done at shortstop, the whole package, the whole Willy Adames package, he's my MVP.
Do you feel like, okay, so if they're not going to bring him back, is there going to be a Josh Hader-like effect in that clubhouse? That didn't work out so well when the Brewers decided to move on from him. Will be moving Adames, when he's not there anymore, if that's what ends up happening, how do you think the team's going to react to that?
Well, I feel like if they would have done this at the trading deadline, that was the problem with Hader. The pennant race. They do it in the offseason, a little bit different. That's just business. All right.
Sure.
And what's going to do is it's probably going to move Ortiz, the shortstop, and then they got to find themselves another third baseman. But I think that's the way they look at it. The Hader thing was right during the season. It's like, why are you trading your all-star closer when we're in a pennant race? So off-season's a little different than trading him during that time.
Fair enough. All right, offensive MVP for the Cardinals. Hasn't been a lot of good ones this year. The offense has been kind of stuck in a rut for quite some time. I'm going to go ahead and give it to give me Alec Burleson. I have to go with Alec Burleson. He's also probably going to be my choice for biggest surprise just because nobody expected what Alec Burleson is doing. He's not good against left-handers, but nobody in this lineup is. But man, does he mash against those righties, and he has been a force. Him and Mason Wynn at the top of the lineup, by far the biggest surprises and your offensive MVPs this year. It's not the names that you're used to seeing. This is kind of the turnover that we feel like is happening in St. Louis, where some of these names that you're more familiar with, they're not the main pieces anymore. Contreras, obviously, our Contreras dealt with the injury with the broken arm, so he might be up there because he was hitting very well before that happened. But yeah, give me some Alec Burleson. Keep an eye on the guy we call Biscuits in this series, Chuck. How about your top pitcher? You can go starter or reliever. Who's it been for you?
I'm going to go Colin Ray. It'd be a toss-up between Colin Ray and I'm going to go with the starter. There's been guys on the bullpen who have done it for the Brewers this year. McGill, Hudson, Koenig. But I'm going to go with Colin Ray. He's coming off 2 hits over 7+ innings on Sunday. He edges out Tobias Myers for pitcher of the year.
And listen to these names that Chuck's bringing up. Cardinal fans are like, who is he talking? Is he making these people up? No, but that's how good the Brewers have been, dude. It doesn't matter who they use. Things have just worked out. It's been amazing to watch. Pitcher for us, I'm going to go relief pitcher because the starters have just kind of been up and down. Sonny Gray was a nice signing, but we thought he'd be better than what he's been. He's kind of hit a wall over the last month and a half. But Ryan Helsley, the closer, 38 saves, I believe, is where he's at now. Was for a long time tops in the league. I don't know if he's still number one in saves after today's action or not, but he's been something else. Things get a little iffy sometimes in the 9th inning, but he's only blown, I think, 3 saves this year, and it's been nice because there has been many years with the Cardinals where it's like this. We've got guys out there who have blown 10, 11, and you're just like, what are we doing? Where Helsley, Hell's Bells, as we call him, he's been pretty locked down most of the year. So he's somebody that I've been very much impressed with. How about your biggest surprise this year? Who's a guy that came from nowhere and it is just like, now you can't take him out of the lineup?
Jackson Churiel. When I say surprise, better than I thought he'd be at this point.
He's 20, right?
20 years old, 16 home runs in the heart of the Brewers lineup, just doing great things at the plate. There's been a lot of comparisons with him and other great ball players. But I just think not that I didn't think he was going to be like this, but I didn't think it was going to come this soon.
Yeah. Can you give us a secret on how you develop young hitters in Milwaukee? Because we're having a problem in St. Louis. Guys like Dylan Carlson and, Tyler O'Neill and, Randy Arozarena and Adolis Garcia, they all go everywhere else and do very, very well. Now we're freaking out about Jordan Walker, who was our top hitting prospect. Mason Wynn has been fine. Nobody seems to whine and complain about him, but Jordan Walker cannot seem to get it together. Nolan Gorman's another one that has really regressed this year despite showing some promise. Is there a secret that you can share that I can pass along to the coaching staff over in St. Louis?
JD, Jordan Walker surprises me because I looked at that guy. When I saw him, I thought I see a guy who's got a lot of talent.
Sure.
What is he doing?
250, just a monster, can run, has got a cannon for an arm.
What was he out in the minor leagues for?
He wasn't hitting all that great down there until recently either, where he was struggling to get launch angles is what we were talking about. And he was unable to get the ball in the air and was smoking the ball down at Memphis over the last week or so. They bring him up after Carpenter goes on the IL, and he's got 1 hit since he came back up. And it's weird because they're platooning him in right field. His splits say that he's a better hitter against right-handed pitching, but they won't start him against right-handers. They want him to hit against lefties, and he hasn't done anything yet. It's bizarre where everybody's worried that they're screwing him up, just like they've screwed up a lot of their other young hitters, and that this is going to be another disaster, and he's going to end up being a superstar for somebody else. Maybe Milwaukee one day. Maybe you guys.
The Cardinals asking the Brewers how to get things done?
We need help, Chuck. We're not used to this. We don't know what we're doing anymore.
No. Before we're crowned anything.
That's true. I know, but we're very frustrated here in St. Louis. All right, who's your biggest disappointment on the year? And I know you could go injuries because that happens to everybody, but if there's somebody that's not injured where it's just been like, who would it be?
Well, initially I would have said Christian Yelich on that. I would go with, there haven't been a lot of disappointments on this team at all. Rhys Hoskins does have the 20 home runs. He's picking it up a little bit now. At one point, I would have said Rhys on that answer. I'm going to go with Garrett Mitchell, who's been up and down, sliding.
Yeah.
Some days good, some days bad. He's on a slide right now. I would say Garrett Mitchell, but overall, he's a young guy, so I can't be all that disappointed in him. You know what I'm saying? I can't. What about you?
Well, I mean, there's a number of them. I'll give you Goldie, Arenado. I can give you all these guys. Yeah. What's funny is you're like, hey, Yelich would be my biggest disappointment, where his numbers are very comparable to Nolan Arenado. And your guy was hitting 315. Well, we're at 268. But it's got to be my biggest disappointment. And I know it's been a tough year for both Goldie and Arenado, but the Nolan Gorman problems have really blown me away, where he's got, here's the thing, Chuck, he's got 19 home runs, he's got 50 RBIs, and they don't even play him anymore because he went into such a rut where he was striking out 42% of the time. Like, he's not putting the ball in play, and he's young, and it's another one of those situations where we're worried that the Cardinals have screwed this guy up. He's 24 years old, shows all this potential, is starting to play a very good second base. And now they can't even put him on the field because they don't trust him to put the ball in play anymore. And it's like, what happened? Like, how did it get this bad? And how have we not fixed him? And why is he still in the major leagues if he needs to go fix things somewhere else and get at bats every day? I don't know. It's a very confusing time. So, the veterans not showing up have been really, really tough. All the promise that I could go on and on about the disappointment. It's Lars Nootbaar. Like, he has never lived up to anything that people thought he was going to be thus far. Injuries continue to be a problem. I could sit here and whine and complain this whole time. I don't want to do that over and over.
Because it's a winnable division, JD. No, what I'm saying, the Brewers right now got this division wrapped up. But I mean, I think going into the season, I think this division was wide open for a number of different teams. If you go into the National League West, you'd say, well, the Dodgers, American League East, well, maybe Baltimore, maybe the Yankees. But this division, I mean, there were so many different names people were throwing out there to win this thing. And I still think it's wide open. I don't think the Brewers have a stranglehold on this division just because they're winning. I mean, this year, yes, but I'm saying over the course of the next several years. It depends on who goes out and improves their team in the offseason.
Yeah, it's really about developing, I think, because none of our teams, even Chicago, they're like, we're not going to go spend $350 million on a payroll. It's just not going to happen. So we all have to learn to develop these players, and some teams have just been better at it than others. And, and that's just kind of where the pecking order is at the moment, where the Brewers have been able to make some shrewd moves. Like the Adames move has been a monster one for them over the last couple of years. Grabbing a Rhys Hoskins has been huge for them to replace people. So I don't know. Things are just clicking in Milwaukee, and as bad as it pains us to watch it, is just a fan of baseball, I think it's cool to see a team like a Milwaukee Brewer team up amongst those other cities in New York and Baltimore and LA and playing right along with the Phillies and stuff like that without having to spend all that money. It was something I've always respected about the Tampa Bay Rays over the years. And I think this is cool. And I wish you guys the best of luck. I still want to beat you over the next 3 days. This is your pitching matchups. Frankie Montas will be against Eric Fetty on Tuesday. So both guys that both teams got at the trade deadline. You mentioned Tobias Myers. He'll be taking on Kyle Gibson, who, he's one of those guys that's really good for a few games, and then he has one really bad blow-up game. Just had that blow-up game against the Reds, so Gibson might be back on if he goes to what his normal path is. And then it's going to be Freddie Peralta against Miles Michaelis on Thursday. The Brewers have beaten the snot out of Michaelis many times. I don't know why they wouldn't do it again this time. So the Cardinals will be lucky to take 2 of 3, but more likely is that the Brewers either take 2 of 3 or sweep this one. I'm pretty sure you see it the same way, right?
Are there 2 Miles Michaelises on your team? Because I feel like he's always pitching against the Brewers. There's got to be 2 of them. There's got to be 2.
You probably want that because both of them probably stink because he's not very good. He's another one of those guys, Chuck, that I love as a human being, and I think he's an outstanding locker room guy. he just doesn't have it, man. He just
He's better than this, though.
He's not, and that's the thing is he's making $17.6 million a year, and he's always been like this, where he gives up a lot of hits, and as he gets older, which is what he's doing, they're going to hit the ball harder against him. If he doesn't have pinpoint accuracy, he gets pummeled. Yeah. And by the time you've seen him the third time around in the lineup, I don't even know why he's out there anymore, because by the time they get there, that's when they really lay the lumber on him. So but he's one of your guys, and he's under contract for another year next year. So he's going to be there. Both Miles Michaelis, Two-Face Michaelis, will be there to face the Brewers on multiple occasions next year as well. So I hope you're ready for it.
Every time we go into a matchup with Michaelis, I think, oh boy, we're facing this. And then all of a sudden, you're right. The Brewers shell him for.
Yeah, I would be cheering if I saw Miles Michaelis on the card. Yes. We got that guy. All right. Well, it should be, we're going to have some fun with the series. Maybe the Cardinals can make some games out of it. They just played the Dodgers pretty tough after just getting blasted by the Cincinnati Reds in Cincinnati. They lost 2 of 3 to the Dodgers, but it was a 2-1 ball game. Kershaw was awesome on Sunday. And then they blew the lead on Friday night, but it was a 1-run game, 7-6. So hopefully they're entertaining games, and we'll be here to talk about them and cover them all. So where can everybody find you, Chuck, in case they're looking to keep up with you and haven't done that yet?
All right. Locked On Brewers, Google, Spotify, Apple, are on all the major downloads. Go to YouTube, search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. That'll let you every time we drop an episode. Also, hit me up on Twitter, Chuck Freeman, FREIMUND. And by the way, this past weekend, I was actually pulling for you guys because, like I said earlier, we're trying to catch the Dodgers. So I can't remember last time I was cheering for the Cardinals in August.
Yeah, not something normal for you. You probably felt weird. It probably felt icky. Did it feel icky, Chuck, that you were doing that?
Yeah, I was disappointed when you guys won or when you lost. Like yesterday, had a 2-1 game. Newpark hit the only run in that game.
Yeah, the pinch hit one off of Hudson.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that.
Yeah, Kershaw looked really, really good. And again, here's one thing. I feel like you guys are doing us a solid. You're starting all right-handers in this series, which is the ones that we hit better than we hit lefties. So if you know any left-handed pitchers, if you got any of them floating around the stadium, you just bring them in, and they'll probably shut down this Cardinals lineup. So just keep that in mind, okay?
We'll do that. Hang in there. Enjoy the final 6 weeks of the season, JD. And again, it feels good for the shoe to be on the other foot for a change, and that we're winning and you guys are losing. It's been always reversed in that way for most of my lifetime. But
I know what goes around comes around, and I'm catching hell from listeners and stuff for laughing too much during these crossovers. But what else can you do at this point of the season? Like I could sit here and sulk and be mad the whole time, or I can have a good discussion with good people like you, Chuck, and talk about ball. So that's what we try to do here at the Locked On Podcast Network. So make sure you like, subscribe on our YouTube and on our Twitters, and of course, everywhere you find your podcasts, and help our channels grow. Our love for the Brewers, our love for the Cardinals, all of it. You guys are the best fans of baseball for a reason, and we will see you next time. We'll cross it over again here real soon, Chuck. We're not done yet this year. We'll do it real soon here on the Locked On Podcast Network.